Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. He, of course, the founder and the boss over at the Article 3 Project, article3project.org. It's Mike Davis. Mike, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me back, Joe.
You're very welcome. I watched some of this Senate hearing stuff today with the Secret Service, with the FBI. We now have confirmation it was a bullet, like we needed somebody to tell us that it was a bullet. For some reason, you had Christopher Wray the other day couching and going, we don't know if it was a glass, it was a bullet. And then, of course, the FBI immediately backtracked on that and said, no, it's a bullet. Nobody said it wasn't. Then the deputy director today cleared that up, which was good. But the guy that jumps out at me and who we've been talking about on Twitter or X today is this guy, Ronald Rowe. The guy, I'd never heard of the guy before, although he looks familiar for some reason. He is the new acting Secret Service director, and he said unequivocally, Mike, that it's a non-political organization. Now, this guy is a non-political guy then, right?
Well, the rank and file of the Secret Service are good men and women who put their lives on the line every day to protect the president, President Trump, and other protectees of the Secret Service. But the leadership of the Secret Service is definitely political, and this is on full display since July 13th, when an assassin almost took off President Trump's head on national TV, and there have been serious failures. And frankly, I blame this on President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. They have run a campaign strategy that Trump is an existential threat to democracy.
Right.
He's a dictator, and they need to stop him at all costs. And after Biden and Harris failed in their attempts to bankrupt him, to throw him in prison for the rest of his life, to take him off the ballot, the Supreme Court stopped them. How have they responded? They've responded by saying that Trump must be stopped. We're going to put a bullseye on Trump's head. And then the Biden-Harris administration intentionally underfunded President Trump's Secret Service detail. They denied requests by President Trump's Secret Service detail to beef up his protection. They denied for President Trump, while at the same time they beefed up protection for Ukraine's president, Zelensky. And then you have this political leadership that's rotten to the core.
It is Mike Davis, article3project.org. Go and follow him everywhere as well. MRDDMIA, right, Mike?
That's correct.
See, I've got it locked in my memory now. We've been doing this long enough. I looked up some of my interviews the other day. I've interviewed like 30 times, which I'm glad, because we get great information from you every time. Go and support what he does at article3project.org. What do you know about this guy, Ronald Rowe? Again, I'd never heard of him before, but he insisted that they were non-political. But he's got a political background, doesn't he?
He's definitely political. Look, this guy has played the political game in Washington, in the Secret Service headquarters. He, he's been in legislative affairs at the Secret Service for a long time. He's definitely a political animal. He detailed to the Obama White House, where he worked in the Obama National Security Council before he worked on the Senate Judiciary Committee, when Chairman Patrick Leahy was the chairman. And in both of those instances, he overlapped with then Senator Joe Biden and then Vice President Joe Biden. And it was the Biden-Harris administration that made him the deputy director of the Secret Service, and then the acting director of the Secret Service when the last director, that Joe Biden pick, got chased out of office. Like, these are political animals. It's not the rank and file who are political animals. It's the political leadership who are the political animals.
Well, Mike, you got to love the game that they're playing. When somebody asks either him or they asked Kim Cheadle before she resigned, friend of Jill, did you say yes to the request for more detail? And the answer was, nobody requested more detail in Pennsylvania. Well, I didn't ask you that. Over the years since President Trump has been out of office, have you said yes to the request by his personal detail, the Secret Service detail, to increase the presence? And they keep on doing this game where they're pretending like, well, nobody asked anything about Pennsylvania, when you and I both know that they'd been asking the entire time for almost 3 years to get more detail. In fact, Jill Biden was in Pittsburgh that day, the same day that Trump was shot. She had more people protecting her than President Trump did at an open-air rally. So is anybody falling for the okie doke here, Mike? I mean, what I just said is verifiably true.
Yeah, I mean, the buck stops with President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. They are directly responsible. They almost got President Trump killed with their campaign strategy, with their extreme rhetoric, and with their intentional underfunding of President Trump's Secret Service detail. There's no question that they have blood on their hands. And it was just by a miraculous intervention by God that President Trump did not have his head blown off on national TV. It was
Yeah.
a centimeter and a millisecond difference.
We knew how political they were when they said no to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., whose father and uncle both were assassinated. When they said no to him, even though he's polling 5, 6, 7, 8%, when they said no to him, we knew that there was something politically going on where they were keeping the Secret Service for the people they think are important, which would be the Biden family, including Hunter and everybody else. So at the end of the day, do you believe that the Secret Service is stepping, again, I agree with you. Even Eric Trump tells me we love the Secret Service detail that is assigned the personal detail to my father. They did the best job they could that day, but they were shorthanded. Do you believe that they're going to do a better job now through November, or should we worry about Trump's safety?
I think we should worry about President Trump's safety based upon the reaction we're getting from the former director who got chased out of town and this current acting director, this political animal who's the acting director of the Secret Services. Look, what are we, 13, 17 days, whatever we are, 17
Right,
days
17.
from the near assassination of a former and likely future president of the United States. That would have brought our country to its knees. And we have 17 days later, this acting director who was put into this job by the Biden-Harris administration can't answer basic questions from U.S. senators, right? This is crazy. That doesn't give it. He's still investigating. Okay, well, President Trump is on the stump. He's on the stump
Right.
almost every day, and they're still investigating, and they can't figure out what the hell happened. I mean, that gives me very little confidence that this Biden, Kamala, DHS, and Secret Service is going to do what it takes to protect President Trump between now and November 5th.
It is Mike Davis, article3project.org. He's the boss over there, the founder. Go follow him, MRDDMIA, over on social media. He's a great follow, posts all day long. Very, very exact and concise information on exactly what's going on in this country. To that end, let's talk about the Constitution and the fact that we've got a Supreme Court now that actually has more textualists than those who would just somehow try to interpret the Constitution. In other words, we've got a majority conservative court that actually believes the paper means something. The words on that paper mean something. So much so that Biden's angry that he can't just give people loan relief. He's angry that the court would dare make rulings, against Roe v. Wade, which clearly abortion should be at the states, not at the federal level. He's angry that presidential immunity actually extends to a former president like Trump. I mean, and he wants that to be gone. He wants to put term limits on the Supreme Court. Mike, does he have any power to do any of that stuff?
He does not. And think about what Joe Biden is asking people to do. We have a Venezuelan dictator, Maduro, who rigged his elections and politicized and weaponized intel agencies and law enforcement. He persecuted his political enemies. He banned political opposition. He ruled by decree, and he's destroyed the independence of the Supreme Court. I mean, I think the Biden State Department condemns Venezuela's dictator Maduro for doing these things, while at the same time, President Biden is doing these very same things in America.
Yes. Oh, he's doing the exact same thing. So is this, I mean, obviously it is, but let me ask you and let you answer. Is this a campaign move because he thinks that this is going to rally Gen Z voters who all want to have abortions all they want?
Look, this is not just campaign rhetoric on their part. The Biden and Kamala have proven over the last 3.5 years that they actually mean business when it comes to this politicization and weaponization of intel agencies and law enforcement. They tried to bankrupt Trump. They tried to throw him in prison for life. They tried to take him off the ballot, and they, at a minimum, they were reckless and almost had Trump's head blown off on national TV. If President Kamala Harris is in the White House on January 20th, that means that they will almost certainly win the House and the Senate for Democrats. They will nuke the legislative filibuster. You saw the White House press secretary just say today that that's on the table. They will nuke the legislative filibuster, meaning lower the vote threshold from 60 to 51 votes to pass legislation in the Senate. They will pack the Supreme Court with left-wing radicals like Tanya Chutkan. We have Brian Fallon from Demand Justice, who is now Kamala Harris's top communications aide. He is a left-wing radical. This is who Kamala has around her as a top aide. They will pack the Supreme Court with left-wing radicals, and there goes our God-given rights to speak, worship, associate, and protect ourselves. This is not campaign rhetoric. This is not just to gin up their base. They are playing for keeps. These are leftist. These are Marxist. And if the BLM and Antifa and Hamas riots and much more deadly and destructive Hamas riots between now and the election have proved one thing: it's they play for keeps, today's Democrats.
Without a doubt, it is Mike Davis. Go to article3project.org. Go support everything that he does. What's the procedure, though? I mean, you have to have an act of Congress. Congress has, because we assume that the Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment because I think it only says something like they've got to act well or they've got to be in good standing or they can't break the law or something, and they can stay for as long as they want. It doesn't literally say lifetime appointment. It's been sort of inferred that that's what it means. If you want to change it to 18 years, if you want to change it to where there's no presidential immunity, how do you do that? The executive doesn't have the right to say we're going to throw your ruling out. The executive doesn't have the right to say we're just going to give you term limits. What's the process?
Yeah, it's the lifetime tenure and pay protection for federal judges is guaranteed in the Constitution. And they do this because they do not want federal judges to worry about their next job. They want to insulate federal judges from politics,
Right.
so they can do their job, which is to protect everyday Americans from federal government and state government overreach and mob rule. That is a federal judge's most important responsibility, is to protect Americans from our governments, right? And that's why we have pay protection, and that's why we have lifetime tenure. If you want to change that, it has to be through a constitutional amendment. But Biden and Harris think that you can just do it through legislation, which is clearly unconstitutional. And so is putting an ethics regime on the Supreme Court. They're making up all of these bogus ethics allegations like it's somehow an ethics problem that Justice Sam Alito's wife, Martha Ann Alito, is flying patriotic flags. Somehow they're saying that had something to do with January 6th, which it absolutely did not.
So stupid.
And they're using that as a bogus pretext to try to destroy the Supreme Court. Look, this is what it comes down to. Democrats controlled the Supreme Court for 90 years. President Trump changed that with his appointments of Justice Gorsuch, my former boss, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Barrett. And we have the first constitutionalist majority in 90 years that's actually going to hold the executive branch in check. These bureaucrats, these unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats do not like this,
Right.
because it's much easier to rule by fiat than through consensus and legislation. And so they're trying to destroy the legitimacy of the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court itself.
Yeah, I noticed that Joe Biden, all those decades in office, never ever said we should have term limits when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was in there ruling as she did. It's Mike Davis, article3project.org. Let's talk about the Constitution provides that the individual states and the individual state legislatures decide how elections will be prosecuted in those states. You have Kamala Harris, who's never won a delegate. She's never won. She was out before the Iowa caucuses in 20 because I thought Tulsi Gabbard ended her career. Even though she called Joe Biden a racist on the stage, he somehow selects her. So it wasn't Biden selecting her. It was somebody else. Having said all of that, she's never won a delegate. She's not the presumptive nominee. She's not the pledged nominee. Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee. He's got all the delegates. In fact, Dean Phillips has more delegates than Kamala Harris does. So, Mike, how are they going to screw this up or screw the American people out of their franchise, 14.5 million people who voted for Biden? How are they going to do that at the convention and just hand it to her? How does that work?
Because they're Democrats and they actually don't care about democracy that they pretend they're protecting. I mean, nothing screams democracy, Joe, like trying to bankrupt, imprison, throw off the ballot your political enemy, get them killed. And when that doesn't work, you just toss overboard the Democrat primary pick who won 14 million Democrat votes. You just disenfranchise all those voters and you pick Kamala Harris in a backroom deal in a bloodless coup, and we're protecting democracy on the Democrat side. Give us a break.
I mean, there are states that literally say the person who won the most delegates is the person that will be on the ballot. So how do you, again, you just say because they're Democrats, they'll just scratch that off and do whatever they want?
Yeah, I mean, these are Democrats, and they will have the Mark Eliases of the world just go in and rig these. Hey, look, they're very Kamala's biggest accomplishment is she is very good at winning elections, right?
Yes.
She hasn't accomplished anything else other than winning elections. And
Right.
I would say to Trump supporters and other Americans, do not underestimate Kamala Harris. She is vicious. I had to work with her in the Senate on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and she is vicious. She plays for keeps. I think she's dumb, and I think her strategy and tactics are dumb, but she is ferocious, she is vicious, and she will fight till the bloody end to win.
And she's a really good liar. She was the one that was actually the motivation behind pretending the Border Patrol was whipping black people coming across the border, which of course never happened. She questioned the then DHS secretary on that. It might have been the Border Patrol boss actually, over and over again, suggesting that because they were black and coming from Haiti, that's why men on horseback, white men, were whipping them. And of course, it turns out even the photographer said nobody whipped anybody. It was just a bad angle. They never touched anybody with the whip. They were using the horses to say you can't come in here illegally. So she's that bad a liar, or as you said, she's that dumb. Which is it?
Well, she's both. She's dumb and evil. She's malicious. She's power craven, and she'll do whatever it takes. Look, I had to work with her on the Senate Judiciary Committee, as I said. She was the one who ran the Me Too strategy against Brett Kavanaugh, right? And they thought they were going to take him out. She didn't care who got in her way, but guess what? We made that backfire on Kamala Harris when Democrats won the House of Representatives in 2018. A first off-year election for a president is generally bad for that president. We took out 4 Senate Democrat incumbents over the Kavanaugh fight, and we picked up 2 Senate seats in the Senate, which paved the way for us confirming Amy Coney Barrett and finishing Trump's transformation of the Supreme Court. So in reality, that's Kamala's biggest accomplishment.
Wow. It is Mike Davis, Article 3 Project. My quick opinion on this, and I'll let you go. I really appreciate the time today. They're using the strategy that you and Trump and J.D. Vance and I and anybody who's conservative or loves the country or loves the flag or is a Republican. I'm not a Republican, I'm conservative. But anybody who's on our side is weird. Is that going to work? What do you think of that strategy? We're all weird somehow.
Yeah, so Kamala Harris's strategy, they can't say that Trump's a dictator anymore because they almost had his head blown off on national TV. So they're pivoting to Trump, and J.D. Vance's supporters are weird. So these working class Americans, real Americans and real America, like my family from Iowa, are all weirdos. And these freaks, these coastal elite left-wing freaks are the normal ones. It's those weirdos in real America, real Americans in real America who are trying to chop off the genitals of kids, right? Yeah, we're the weirdos. It's not Kamala and her weirdo supporters.
If that's normal, I want to be weird, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of that simple.
Count us all as weird if that's weird.
Yes. Go and follow him everywhere, MRDDMIA, over on X and everywhere else. It's Mike Davis, article3project.org to go and support what he does. You got to follow the guy. I mean, he posts threads that will enlighten you on what's true, what's not true, and then some. Mike, thanks a million for coming back today.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, brother.